So I just don't. This is one of those things where I view it so differently than seemingly everyone else. I've just conceded that I'm probably going to end up being wrong on this, but I don't know why everyone is so convinced he's getting a contract this summer.
Because they said it.
Teams say a lot of things. Like the Dolphins were super committed to Tua and made him wait an extra year. Now then he did then get it eventually, but if you're the Niners, I don't know why you are incentivized to pay him at the earliest possible date, which that is the thing. This is the earliest they can pay him is right now. If I were running the Niners, I would probably, there's two types of contracts I would offer him. I maybe offer him either one, you choose, and then if you don't like either version, then let's see how this year goes. But because we want to see what you look like. You're right, Brew. It's not like he has a terrible team, but he no longer has what I would call like a super team around him, which is, we'll pay you $55 million a year. That's fine, but only the first year is guaranteed. So, 4 years, $220 million, whatever that is, $55 million the first year, fully guaranteed, and then after that, pay as you go. Or we'll offer you $100 million guaranteed on a 4-year deal. That averages around what Sam Darnold got, $33 million a year.
Not even the Daniel Jones contract. Daniel Jones got the 4 years, 160.
4 years, 160 with
about 100
with $100 million guaranteed. Because the Niners' leverage is, buddy, you've made $3 million. You're slated to make $5 million this year. You got hurt last year, and you had your worst season. Why are we rushing to pay you?
Guys, I don't understand what they don't understand, what Nick doesn't understand. I don't. They know who Brock Purdy is. They've had him in the building, both on and off the field now, for years. They've reached the conclusion that Brock Purdy is the quarterback that they want to move forward with. Just because you aren't, sure of that, and because you still have doubts about Brock Purdy, doesn't mean that the 49ers do. And they have more information than you. So yeah, they're looking to get a more team-friendly-ish deal, whatever that number ends up being, $45 million, whatever it is. Essentially anything less than $65 million ends up being like, a victory these days from the quarterback position. And they're looking forward to now moving forward with a quarterback of Brock Purdy's level and paying him at the rate that they're looking to. So yes, kicking the can down the road does nothing for you. They're not like, well, we want to see what you do with a bad team now, or just not a great team. They saw what he's done with a great team. They're looking to now build another great team. They got 1 million draft picks. They're looking to kind of reset this. They want to lock Brock Purdy up at a good enough deal that then now isn't a massive, hit for them. And they trust his ability because they've seen him play. They've seen him get this team to the NFC Championship game, multiple NFC Championship games, and a Super Bowl. So I don't understand what you're talking about here. I really don't. I really don't. Yes, are you still waiting to see if Brock Purdy can be better than Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson? Okay, if you're still waiting on that, then that's on you, bro. That's on you. So, I don't understand. The 49ers know who Brock Purdy is. They're comfortable with who Brock Purdy is. And they want to get him on a reasonable contract. So, yes, you want to do it now. That makes logical sense. I don't understand. I really don't. And you want to act like he was like this awful quarterback last year, which is just not true. Since we love to just use these baseline stats, he had a roster this past year that was not good, with people that were in and out of the lineup, and when they were in the lineup, the Avengers, they were clearly not the Avengers. All right? It was another weird multiverse, if we want to keep with the Marvel references. So this was an incredibly difficult year to manage. Having players go in and out of the lineup, and when they are in the lineup, you're like, well, wait, are you actually the guy that I know you to be? No, you're not? Okay. So I don't understand. And yet, relatively speaking, he had a fair amount of success. Not to mention the other side of the ball, if it wasn't an absolute dumpster fire and was significantly better, they win more games and probably end up in the playoffs. There you have it. If the Chiefs had the 49ers defense, they would have not made the Super Bowl. Not even up for debate. Not even up for debate. They would have struggled to make the playoffs. There's a great chance that they would have lost to the Broncos, lost to the Chargers, lost to the Ravens. They would be a wild card team now. We know that was a defensive-led team. We know Mahomes was averaging like an interception a game for the first like 6-7 games, whatever it was. And it was like, well, they had injuries and Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown and Pacheco. But he finds ways to win. Yeah, because his defense was keeping these games really close. And they were asking Patrick Mahomes to do a lot less. So I don't understand. I really, really don't. It just, why don't we have the same conversation again and 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 again. I don't understand. I really don't. It's so simple. It's so simple. This team was a mess that was decimated by injuries. Brock Purdy, relatively speaking, did decent. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Have we consistently seen other quarterbacks over the years not be perfect in these types of situations? Yes. Again, the gold standard, although slowly becoming no longer the gold standard of the current NFL, is Patrick Mahomes. And, no me gusta. So I don't understand. Heck, you had someone like, Nick, praising someone like Geno Smith, and it's like, huh? I just don't get it. I mean, Nick praises Geno Smith all the time, since we don't want to just keep using Patrick Mahomes as a reference point. I mean, Geno Smith played 2 extra games than Brock Purdy, and yet, they would have had the same, pretty much identical passing yards, except Brock Purdy had more yards per attempt. They had, Geno Smith had 1 more touchdown than him, but again, played less games, so it's safe to say that he would have had the same number of touchdowns, if not more. You can give him an extra interception if you want, so he would have also, though, had less interceptions. Like, I guess I'm just confused by this. I really am. I mean, and Geno Smith had the 11th best defense in terms of points against, making his job significantly easier. And yet he only led them to the 18th best offense. And here you had Brock Purdy playing with a 29th defense. Like, make it make sense. Seriously, make it make sense. And yet he had a better offense. He ran a better offense. And it wasn't because of all the great weapons he had, because we already established of all the injuries. And that's why people are saying, oh, Brock Purdy's not that good. He had a bad year, and that's because the Avengers weren't there. So then you can't say that he had a great team. So he didn't have a great team. He didn't have a great defense. His offensive weapons were injured and in and out of the lineup. Yet he was still top 13. Still did pretty good, and did it with a trash defense that was bottom of the league. I don't understand. I really, really don't. It just does not make sense. I mean, just look at the support that Brock Purdy was getting from just a yak perspective. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, when you got players, he's at 1644. You got players like Patrick Mahomes getting 2,300 yards after a catch. That, and as I told you before, that is an indicator of Andy Reid understanding his roster and how to work around all the injuries and support his quarterback. That has nothing to do with Patrick Mahomes. That's Andy Reid. Shanahan absolutely dropped the ball. He had him throwing the ball further than Patrick Mahomes and getting less yards after catch, and Patrick Mahomes was throwing shorter passes and getting more yards after catch. Geno Smith as well had 2,181 yards after catch. In terms of obviously his receivers, not himself individually, obviously. So it's just so bizarre. We can see the lack of support that Brock Purdy was getting. We can see that. And yet he still played pretty decent. He was not this fundamental issue here. In the top 10 or so for on-target percentage, you have Brock Purdy. He's right around like 13, 14. So it's just, where you see Brock Purdy all the way up to, it's up to Geno Smith actually for on target. But when you actually look at this more closely, and again, look at the average depth of target, he's at 8.4. Okay? Everyone above him is throwing shorter passes except for Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert. Makes it all the more impressive that he's throwing further passes and yet just as accurate. Right around, the range of them being just as accurate. But throwing further passes. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I just don't get it. Because we also see now, without a shadow of a doubt as well, that when you give Brock Purdy a good to great roster, he's able to lead that team to a Super Bowl and multiple NFC championship games. And we've seen him now be pretty decent with a bad team. So you're saying that you only want to extend or sign a quarterback or pay a quarterback who you believe can win or win a Super Bowl with a bad team. Like I don't understand what the logic is. We've seen what he can do with a good team. So then the approach is, well, we just need to give him a good team and we know he can win because we've seen him do it over multiple years. There's other quarterbacks where you would still be like, I don't know what happens when we give this guy a great team. Or we've given this guy a great team. We can't even get to the conference championship game. We've seen Dak with an awesome offense. Awesome offensive weapons, great coordinator, etc. Come up short. Look very lost in the playoffs. We've seen that. We've seen it. We've seen Tua come up short. We've seen Lamar Jackson come up short. And I don't mean just come up short in terms of losing. I just mean like they fundamentally were a part of the problem. Not just at the team as a whole. Because again, you can always attribute things to the team, coaching, game plan, just playing a better team, simply, put. So I just don't understand. I really don't. I really, really, really don't. I mean, we know Nick is low on Sam Darnold, and I've defended Sam Darnold. I blamed more of some of the issues with the O-line and even Kevin O'Connell for why things failed. But, and people can't decide whether they think that team was stacked or not. It's really kind of funny depending on what frame of what opinion you want to hold in terms of whether or not Sam is good or bad. They want to say this team was stacked and Sam was bad, or this team wasn't stacked and now they're better. And it's just like, I can't keep up. But we could just say that team was pretty good, good enough, and they weren't able to win. And again, depending on who you want to blame, we know Nick wants to blame Sam for that. Okay, so if that's the logic we want to take, and we want to blame Sam for those failures, then doesn't Brock Purdy get credit for succeeding with also a good team then? It just doesn't make sense. You understand that asymmetry, that disconnect, where you have a quarterback who we say is propped up by their team and their coach. And then when they come up short or play poorly in like a big game or the playoffs, whatever, we say, see that, we told you that quarterback's not good enough. But then when another quarterback who we say is being propped up by the team and coach, who then continues to play pretty darn good in big moments, we say, yeah, but that had nothing to do with him. It was because the coach and the quarterback propped him up. It doesn't make sense. If it was a single year, I could understand. I truly could. But that's not the case. This was also over multiple years. So and again, your logic can't be like we're only going to pay like a top 4, top 5 quarterback. And anything else than that is just not worth it. Okay? Like and what is the plan for the 49ers? Who are they going to draft? Who are they going to pick up? Like I don't understand. I mean, let's just look around the NFL for quarterbacks who we know actually exist and have played in various teams and various rosters. What quarterback specifically makes this 49ers team better? Baker Mayfield? Dak Prescott? Tua? Kirk Cousins? Like which I'm trying to think of like more realistic. Obviously, I'm not going to say Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I'm trying to think of like other quarterbacks who would potentially be more in Brock Purdy's tier, which I'm not saying he is or he isn't, or I think he's better than a Dak Prescott, et cetera, et cetera. So don't get too lost in the names that I'm saying. I'm just trying to make a point here. It's just like, what quarterbacks though are there? Again, Daniel Jones. So do you think Geno Smith, again, Nick thinks Geno Smith's great. Geno Smith's would be better on the 49ers than Brock Purdy? You're really confident about that? Based on what? Based on what? Tell me. I want to hear it. Tell me. So it just doesn't make sense to me. None. Zero. And it's not fair to use a Joe Burrow, a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson, or Mahomes as a reference point in that regard. Except for when you're pointing out, well, hey, even these great quarterbacks struggle when their team isn't that great. And they struggle to win. Do they still look better? Do they give their team a better chance to win? Absolutely. Absolutely. If I have a bad team, yes, I truly believe that Josh Allen, Lamar, Joe, and Patrick Mahomes are going to do a better job carrying their team than Brock Purdy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Undeniably. And that's okay. That's okay. Can we say without a shadow of a doubt that some of those quarterbacks are better than Brock Purdy at maximizing the roster around them? Maximizing a great roster? I don't know if we can 100% say that. I'm not so sure about that. We haven't necessarily seen that. We've seen Brock Purdy do it. We've seen him do it. You have to give him some credit for that. You just do. You just do. Everyone wants to give all this credit to Kevin O'Connell for Sam Darnold. And Kevin O'Connell deserves a ton of credit. A ton of credit. So does Sam Darnold. Did Dobbs look like Sam Darnold last year? This past season, that when he played for them in 23? Nick Mullins? Did he? No, he didn't. People say, what about Kirk Cousins? When Kirk Cousins was healthy, he's a darn good quarterback. He was a top quarterback in the NFL. Unfortunate for him, he wasted his prime with dysfunctional organizations and with players that were not that good and with coaches that are no longer in the NFL. This is a complementary sport. You need some good players. You need some good coaching. You can have some great players and some bad coaching. It's going to be hard to win. You can have a great coach, not so good players. It's going to be hard to win. Sometimes when you finally get a great coach and great players, it takes more than a minute to get settled. And sometimes you finally get that, and you know what? You're a little bit older now. Now you're like 33, 34, 35, and it would have been wildly different if you could have had this when you were 27, 28 years old, 25, 24. This is never just a solid target. It's moving, man. It's just constantly moving. I always try to say this is that, like, as much as we want things to be absolutes, it's just so rare to be the case. I try my best to try to find the absolutes because it helps me make sense of the world. But the reality is that, like, I could make so many different videos and they could feel opposed to one another because it's just everything is so situational. Incredibly situational. I could say I think that Brock Purdy's a better quarterback, but Kirk Cousins, he's a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins, but yet Kirk Cousins would have won the Super Bowl in like 2019 because of his veteranship and, his mastery over the game and what they needed from a quarterback in this moment. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, things can be different. Things can be moving all around. It's not stagnant. If it was, the NFL would be cracked. The code would be cracked. And it would just be game, set, match. And it's not. But to have confusion about what the 49ers want to do here, they've had him in the building for years. They know who he is. They're saying we want to pay him. We don't want to give him $65 million, $70 million a year. Understandable. You should, even if you had Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, you shouldn't want to give those quarterbacks that money either. You should want to find a way. How do we get you as cheap as possible? And saying that we're just going to wait till next year, and then using Tua as the reference point is actually kind of hilarious. What about Tua? Yeah, then Tua got a massive contract, but they made him wait an extra year. Okay, and they still paid him a massive contract, and he technically got more expensive. And it makes it harder to continue to conduct business moving forward. Once you lock up Purdy and understand what the exact contract is, what the exact stipulations are, how the maths, it now is easier for everyone else to do their job in terms of building this team and building this roster. It makes everything else more clear. It helps attract free agents. It helps, with the money guys. Like, oh my gosh. Free agency takes, man. I think free agency takes and leading up to the Super Bowl takes are wild. Though this seems to be the craziest stretch in football takes. I think because going up into the Super Bowl, you're forced to talk about just one game and two teams for 2 weeks. And so things get crazy. We already saw that front row seat with the Chiefs versus the Eagles. And now free agency, it's just like everyone just wants to keep twisting themselves in knots. And I don't get it. I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to make sense. And I'm legitimately struggling. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Brock Purdy, losing, half the starters from the Super Bowl? And I guess just, why should they want to pay him and, et cetera, et cetera. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.